Hey guys, Master Riley here from Barley's Karate. We're going to do something a little different tonight. Tonight I'm going to present to you a bunch of different weapons from different Asian martial arts, and we're going to talk about their history, how they developed, and how they can be used. Now you have to remember in Asian martial arts, weapons are not usually the focus. Actually, Karate-do, which is the art of karate, actually means the way of the open hand. So weapons aren't the primary focus, and even though we don't do traditional karate, we do Tang Soo Do, in our style it's very similar. We do weapons, but they're usually something added extra, not the primary focus. A lot of the weapons that we're going to go over today come from Kabuto, which is the weapon system that originated out of Okinawa in Japan. When the island of Okinawa was made part of Japan, certain restrictions were put on common people, which forbid them from carrying weapons. Kabuto was the weapon system that evolved from those restrictions. A lot of the weapons that we're going to go over today have very interesting backgrounds. They developed in unusual ways because people weren't allowed to carry traditional weapons. In fact, many martial arts historians believe that a lot of these weapons originated from farm tools. There are differing opinions about how these weapons originated, but we're going to go over today some of the most common ones and popular ones, and I encourage you to do some research on your own as well. Now, it's important to note that even though a lot of these weapons are associated with Okinawa, they can be traced back to other places as well. So we'll make sure we touch on that too. The first weapon that I'm going to brush over really quickly, because we know a lot about it already, is our bow staff, or in Korean, the bong. This weapon probably originated from farmers who would use long staves to carry things on their backs, such as crops and water. Very simple, you can find a stick just about anywhere. And so people would use these long staves, whether they came from that carrying tool or from rakes or other farm tools, and would train themselves to use those as a fighting and defense weapon. The next weapon that we're going to go over is the nunchucks, or in Korean, sangjobong, which basically just means sticks that are connected. These weapons became really popular in America when action star Bruce Lee started filming martial arts movies, and they became really popular and everyone wanted to be like him and use the nunchucks. There's a couple different theories as to how nunchucks evolved. Some people believe they started as a threshing tool. Threshing means that when you have a crop like rice or soybeans, you have to beat them out of their shell. So they would use devices like this to basically hit and break the grain out of its shell. Another popular theory is the clapper theory. Basically, there was a police force who walked around at night, and one way they would signal to people about danger or burglaries or anything else that where the common folk had to be alerted is they would have these two pieces of wood attached by a string, and to make noise, they would clap them together to alert the town that there was danger and they needed help. The last theory is the horse bit theory. Basically, that pieces of wood joined together by some type of string or chain were used for a horse bit and a bridle that would go in their mouth. Basically, this is the idea that this string connected with sticks is what evolved into the nunchuck weapon that we have today. So let's talk about the nunchucks. The nunchucks that I have here today are padded with foam, used for training, especially with young people and beginners so you don't hit yourself. But traditionally they're made from wood, connected by a chain or a cord in the middle. The chain or cord should be about the width of your palm, and when you hold the nunchucks, you hold at the top. Holding at the bottom gives you very poor control, and holding it at the top allows you to control the movements a little firmer. If you do some research and look at different styles of nunchucks that are out there, you'll actually see two different types. There are nunchucks that were influenced by the Chinese style, and they're rounded, kind of like the nunchucks that I have here. But you'll also see certain nunchucks that are octagonal, like a stop sign. These nunchucks come from Okinawa. And the reason they're octagonal is to give more of a blunt edge, so when you strike, it's more powerful and causes more damage to the opponent. The next weapon we're going to go over is called the kama. It's pretty easy to figure out where it comes from. It was basically starting as a sickle or a scythe used to harvest grain, mainly rice in this area of the world. Usually it was called the poor farmer's weapon because it was just something that a lot of farmers had that could be easily converted into something very dangerous. Also, specifically in Okinawa, metal such as iron was rare, so to have extra metal lying around to specifically make weapons probably wasn't plausible. But this metal every farmer had because they used it for their crops. These weapons are really cool. While they have the obvious blade at the end for striking, they could also be used to trap opponents' weapons and deflect them before striking again with your own blade. There's an even cooler version of the kama called the kusarigama, which is a kama attached to a chain at the end with a weight that you can swing around and use to strike. It's really cool if you look up demonstrations of it. The next weapon we're going to go over is the sai. It can actually be dated back to India and Malaysia, where it's a really popular symbol in Hinduism. A lot of people think that the sai evolved from some type of farmer's tool like the pitchfork, but that's actually probably incorrect. Actually, it probably started as a baton or a metal stick used by the police force. In Japan, there was a weapon called a jite, which was basically a baton with a little spike at the end. A lot of times, palace guards would use this weapon in place of traditional weapons like swords because those weapons usually weren't allowed to be brought into the palace. So something more simple like a baton was easily concealed and considered less dangerous. The prongs here on the side are referred to as yoku, and these could also be used for trapping. When the sword or the bow staff or other traditional weapons came down, they could land in the sais and be twisted and moved out of the way. Usually the sai has some type of grip at the end, and it can be moved back and forth, poking with this side and turning and striking with the stick side. Though this weapon may look sharp at the end, it was actually usually blunt. It's more often that this would be used for striking than it would be for poking, and any puncture wounds that you got from being hit with this end usually weren't lethal. Another weapon that we're going to go over is the fan, or a war fan. This is not a traditional kabuto weapon. It was actually used by samurai in feudal Japan. Originally, the fan wasn't even a weapon at all. It was used on the battlefield like a flag. Different symbols and signs and the way you waved it would be used to signal to your troops what it is you wanted them to do. It was a form of communication. However, they could also be used for defensive purposes. A lot of war fans were made out of iron and could be opened and closed. When closed, they could be used for heavy strikes. But like I said, they were more of a defensive weapon. When open, they would be used to block things like darts and arrows and knives. And remember, they were made of iron, so they were nice and sturdy, not like this fan that I have here. Just like the sai, these weapons were popular because they could be brought into places where swords were not allowed, like palaces. And they were easily concealable. One of the cool things about the fan is if you read a lot of Japanese mythology, the fan is often used by warriors to defeat opponents in really cool ways. The last weapon you'll sometimes see us have in the karate school is the eskrima stick. Eskrima or arnis or kali, they're all kind of interchangeable words for the same thing. They mean a little bit of different things depending on who you ask, but for our purposes they're all the same. Eskrima is actually the national martial arts of the Philippines. It's a fighting style that evolved between the indigenous people of the Philippines and the influence of the Spanish when they colonized the land. The word eskrima actually evolved from the Spanish word esgrima for fencing. This martial arts style uses sticks for striking and defending, but really these sticks can also stand in for blades and knives. So whenever a martial artist is swinging these sticks, they should pretend that they have a bladed edge and they're moving with that level of proficiency and dangerousness. You have to remember that the reason martial arts often developed in Asia is because of the restrictions put on the common people. They often weren't allowed to practice martial arts, especially not with your usual weapons. Karate and many other martial arts usually focus on open hand defense because oftentimes that's all that was available to those people. It's the same way with Tang Soo Do. Though we practice many Asian weapons, they aren't a primary focus. However, that doesn't mean that they're not really cool to learn about, and the way that they evolved and originated is super interesting. If you want, definitely do some research and check out videos of different martial arts practicing with them. You're sure to find something cool, and maybe one day you'll be able to do it yourself. Thanks for watching, guys. Keep training hard at home, and we'll see you soon. Tang Soo.